number of beneficiaries involved, by virtue of the profile of the families directly affected by NSFAS operations. NSFAS has since become a major political item. And I've got no doubt in my mind that in the next elections, we're going to be a major area of deliberations and discussions. In the last 2 years, NSFAS spent an average of 11.9 billion rands per annum, 18 billion rands this year. And this will explain why when something goes wrong at NSFAS, it immediately affects 1.1 million students, and when factoring parents and siblings and family in general, it affects more than 6 million people just at one go. 6 million people and above is a figure that is far higher than the readership of any of our biggest newspapers in the country. We are therefore aware that NSFAS is a very important intervention by the state. In fact, it is one of the most important interventions our government has made since its inception and since 1994. Our posture, both as a board and management, will therefore always be to do everything we can do to assist. And in the process, we hope that the students should not be the proverbial grass when elephants are fighting. I just want to quickly take you to the context of the report that brought us here this afternoon. In relation to the purpose of our media briefing, well articulated by the program director, Mr. Mnisi, let me remind you all that the board of NSFAS appointed Werkman's attorneys and advocate Tembeka Ngukaitobi to conduct an investigation into the allegations of irregularities relating to the appointment of direct payment service providers. This is a bid that was issued and advertised on the 25th of January 2022. The closing date was the 25th of February 2022. In this bid, 4 service providers were appointed to facilitate the direct payment of allowances to our students on a national scale. Ladies and gentlemen, the board met on the 15th of October 2023 here in Pretoria to consider the findings and recommendations by the investigators as captured in this report as presented by Werkman's attorneys and advocate Tembeka Ngukaitobi, senior counsel. It's important to mention that the board has since adopted the recommendations of the report and took a resolution to implement them. Now, just yesterday, the 17th of October, the board met the Minister of Higher Education, Science and Innovation, Dr. Blade Zimande, to brief him on the outcome of the investigations, which culminated into this report. Let me also indicate that the information that the investigators relied on consists of both documentary evidence and interviews. Again, let me indicate that this report is a board report and will be implemented in its completeness. Yesterday, the board wrote a letter to the CEO of NSFAS, Mr. Andile Nongogo, and presented to him a copy of the report. Just this morning, We met the representative of the four service direct payment service providers, also to bring the content of this report and its implications to their attention. You will realize that by meeting the service providers, we remain with respect. We could have just written a letter and communicated to them what the recommendations are and that we have got an intention of implementing them. But we call them in recommendations and indicated to them that we're going to implement these recommendations in a manner that doesn't disadvantage the students, in a manner that takes into account their own investments and expectations in this enterprise. Now, hearing the scope of the investigations, allegations against the CEO as covered in various media platforms and related sources, view of the NSFAS supply chain policies and procedures, and the legal compliance of the procurement process. And let me take this opportunity to now reflect on the findings of the investigations in relation to each of these areas and scope of investigations. Now I'll start off. The board, and I must indicate this once more, the board reaffirms its commitment to implement all its progressive policies. These policies include direct payment, it includes our intervention on accommodation, and I just want to emphasize at the outset that the challenges we just about to mention should not be employed to deter all of us to implement policies that will, at the end of the day, be beneficial to our students throughout the country. The policy of direct payment was a result of various consultations with stakeholders. If the list of the people who made their bids on direct payments is anything to go by, it was supported extensively by all the players in the field of direct payment, including big banks, all of whom made bids to render the service of direct payment. So we should separate between the correctness of our policies and the challenges that happened during implementation. The board views the direct payment solution as a necessary measure to reduce instances of unauthorized access to beneficiaries' allowances, payment of ghost students, inconsistencies and delayed payments of allowances were some of the challenges that we faced, which, as we all know, NSFAS adopted. Having said that, the board has noted that there was there were problems related to the current implementation of the direct payment. One of which is that there was no feasibility before the current implementation of the direct payment system, particularly the justification for the appointment of the 4 service providers. I must qualify this. The recent appointment of the service providers followed other attempts in the past, which were in a different context and with a different focus. Now, even if a study was done then, it wouldn't have been in the context of the most recent appointments that were made. Now, the investigators argued that there was no reason furnished why a feasibility study was not conducted, which feasibility study is a critical part of a project preparation or for the implementation of any project. And such an assessment will have enabled NSFAS to make a much more informed decision on the proposed solution and to evaluate the practicality and chances of success of the proposed direct payment solution. The board also notes the fact that the report indicates that there was an amendment to the bid specification to include fintech companies, which resulted in drastic changes in the mandatory requirements of the original bid. These changes will have required deeper analysis to be conducted, amongst others, on the need of the fintech companies, their value-added services, the service direct cost to students, and the details and the cancellation of the 2020 tender, which was a precursor to this bid under investigation. Now, on the allegations against the CEO, and conflict of interest related to or actively participated in the presentation to the bid evaluation committee of proposals by service providers, which he was employed to safeguard and uphold. Furthermore, the report reveals that there seems to have been a conflict of interest in the appointment of these 2 fintech service providers. The report also states that the CEO appointed Dr. Chirwa to assist the bid evaluation committee as a technical advisor. This appointment was inherently incorrect, according to the report, as the 2021 SAM policy does not provide for the appointment of an expert to the bid evaluation committee. The report noted that the above-mentioned SAM policy and position was altered in 2023 SAM policy to remedy the defect of appointing Dr. Chirwa in the BSA when the 2021 SM policy did not provide for such. What is more noteworthy is that Dr. Chirwa's association with certain companies that were appointed as service providers, both at the services sector and at the National Student Financial Aid Scheme. The companies in reference are Ezaga Holdings, in which Ezaga Remit is a subsidiary. In the report, there's a possible relationship, and I want to use the word Chirwa's association with certain companies that were appointed as service providers, both at the services sector and at the National Student Financial Aid Scheme. The companies in reference are Ezaga Holdings, in which Ezaga Remit is a subsidiary. With the report, there's a possible relationship, and I want to use the word possible, relationship between the CEO and Co-Invest and Ezaga Holdings. Another concern raised in the report is the inability of not conducting due diligence to service providers. For an example, in its presentations, Tenet Technologies mentioned that they will be subcontracting to a company known as Coralite Property Limited. These investigators conducted a company check, and those in the subcontracting company. This clearly indicates that there's a clear relationship between the directors of the company and others. Now, that is, in short, the unfortunate findings made by the investigators. You will agree with us. We have just recently received the report. There are lots of steps that need to be taken. There are lots of possible actions that need to be still processed. I indicated earlier on that even in our conversation with the service providers, all we did was to be cautious with them and warn them of the recommendations from the investigation. We haven't given them the report yet. We will do that in due course. We'll do the same to you in due course. The following decisions have been taken, though. Grant him an opportunity to advise us on why, in the light of the findings, his contract should not be terminated. We did that yesterday already. We will also take some steps against any of our staff who are involved in the identified wrongdoing. We'll do that within the ambits of the law and within the necessary caution to keep the organization stable. The direct payment service providers, as indicated, and we've already spoken to them early this morning. There's further room for engagement with them, but all that will be within the law and within the context of the recommendation by the investigators that the appointment was irregular. We will review the supply chain management policy in line with the national treasury regulations and policies, including the PFMA. All these decisions of the board will be implemented progressively. And as you can all see, some of them have been effected already. I want to take this opportunity to thank our Minister, the Minister of Higher Education, Science and Innovation, Dr. Blade Zimande, who continues to support us as the board, to support management by providing all of us with the necessary guidance in implementing our responsibility. I must indicate that the Minister is always available whenever we seek his counsel. And shall I dare say that if there's an organization whose mandate, in our opinion, is closest to his heart, it will be NSFAS by virtue of his love for students. And to the investigators, Mr. Sandile July from Bergman's Attorneys and Advocate Tembeka Ngogaitobi, Senior Counsel, we want to thank you so much for producing this quality report within the allocated timelines. And to my colleagues from the board who are to my right here, a special word of gratitude for your dedication to the cause of service for the children of the working class and the poor. To hardworking and dedicated members of the NSFAS staff, I must pause at this point and just many times we get to hear about the staff of NSFAS in a negative light. But we've got very good staff members who are hardworking, who are committed to the ideal of the organization, and who love our main clients, the students. I want to say to them, thank you so much for your dedication. Continue to show your diligence to both our students and to the nation at large. I would like to thank other stakeholders who are very key to the success of funding in higher education. Our vice chancellors and principals of our TVET colleges and universities who are working with us to resolve the challenges experienced by students on a day-to-day basis. And we know those are not easy challenges. This board is looking forward to your continued support and cooperation to ensure that we serve our students and South Africans diligently. To our students or beneficiaries and their parents, we want to assure you that the NSFAS board remains committed to work even harder to ensure that we transform NSFAS into an efficient and effective provider of financial aid to students from poor and working class families in a sustainable manner that promotes access to and successes in post-school education and training. I want to emphasize that the very fact that we never hesitated to commission this report, and that when this report was handed to us, we made sure that society knows that the report is in our name, is in our hands, and even though we have not distributed it yet, we made it a point that we at least come and talk to you about its contents, its findings, our decision, but to ensuring that our students at universities and TVET colleges get the best of our funding service. In this regard, we'll continue to uphold the value of accessibility, transparency, affordability, reliability, and authenticity. We'll ensure that our employees act with integrity, accountability, and respect, and that they find innovative methods in communicating with our students and also servicing our students. Once again, I want to emphasize that the challenges reflected in this report, which are not comfortable and easy challenges, will not deter us from proceeding with progressive policies adopted by the board after intense consultations. I already mentioned our intervention on student accommodation. By next week, we will have met the management of the Tshwane University of Technology, not very far away from here, with a view of sharing our plans on how we may take, how we're going to take control of accommodation for NSFAS beneficiaries for the rest of that university. You will know from our previous engagements that this year we'll be spending about 13 billion rands on student accommodation. Now, one of the cardinal considerations that this board has made and will continue to make is how best do you invest this money such that there are better returns for it. And one of the ways will be to ensure that we invest our funds from accommodation in a manner that creates appropriate accommodation facilities for students in our TVETs and higher education. We'll do so in collaboration with our universities and TVET institutions. What we'll do at TUT, we'll do at other universities as well. And lastly, let me indicate that we'll soon be announcing the opening of the NSFAS application process for the 2024 academic year, including through public media on the details and processes. To the media houses present here, thank you so much for coming. We know there were so many other competing activities. The events happening in court today are affecting our king, other events at the Union Building. The fact that you are here to cover our announcements and to be part of this engagement is an outstanding demonstration of your commitment to higher education and reskilling our country for better economic development. Program Director, thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Chair, for the brief statement. We now will take this opportunity to give to the members of the media an opportunity to ask questions on the statement. Once more, remember that the Chair is joined by members of the board, including the acting CEO, who will also assist him or join him in responding to some of the questions. I now take this opportunity to give to the members of the media if there are any other questions. Ish, are there any questions online?
Thanks, Chair. We don't have questions online.
Thank you very much. Yes, sir. Please state your name and the organization you're representing.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. My name is Kaya Koko from Singapore. I understand the chairperson is saying that this is an act of transparency and so on. The board is determined to be forthcoming with information. But I just worried about not releasing the full report just yet and just the media statement. Whether the board and the chairperson in particular believes that goes far enough in showing that the board is really truly transparent with this. I mean, we're talking about, as you said, 1.1 million students. As recent as last week, there are about 80,000 students who are affected by this. And yet, besides this briefing, we are in the dark into exactly what happened with the conflicts of interest and other irregularities that happened. So, does the board and the chairperson believe that it has gone far enough with being transparent by refusing to release the report just yet? Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Any other taker? Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much. Any
from Cape Times newspaper. Has there been any indication from the fintech service providers or CEO Nongongo to seek legal action or challenge the findings? The next question, when will the contracts of the service providers be terminated? The next question, does this mean direct payments will be halted? And how long has the board given the CEO to respond on why the contract should be terminated? The next question, does the board believe if it was not for Outhouse investigation, then these alleged irregularities would not be known? And what were the minister's remarks to the findings and the board's decision?
last question. During the recent Portfolio Committee on Higher Education briefing, it was reported that about 80,604 students had not received their allowances. Can we get an update on this? That's all for now.
Thank you, Ish. I'll recognize the chair and then board members. Then the CEO can come as well. Thank you.
Once again, thank you so much, members of the media, for your participation and the questions, transparency and releasing the board.
It was reported that about 80,604 students had not received their allowances. Can we get an update on this? That's all for now.
Thank you, Ish. I'll recognize the chair and then board members. Then the CEO can come as well. Thank you.
Once again, thank you so much, members of the media, for your participation and the questions, transparency and releasing the board, the report. We have made a commitment to release the report. We will release the report. The fact that we called you here to talk about the contents is an indication of our posture on transparency and the appreciation of your role in disseminating what the contents of the report are. What I would like us to appreciate is that these findings and recommendations are far-reaching. They've got huge implications on the service providers themselves. We service providers are businesses who had made plans, who had certain expectations. It also has huge implications on many other stakeholders. So we really need to process this and engage. And this must be done in a manner by the Cape Times. Are there legal actions already? Are there challenges already? So the board must travel this journey in the most responsible and cautious. Our visit to TUT and its implications for students on the accommodation front. About 67 to 70% of the students at TUT are funded by the National Student Financial Aid Scheme. The same statistics can be replicated in other universities. I think at the University of Rwanda, close to NSFAS, same figure. Now, you will know that the National Student Financial Aid Scheme has become more than a mere provider of bursaries. Some we call that study material. Its allowances and accommodations to NSFAS, same figure. Now, you will know that the National Student Financial Aid Scheme has become more than a mere provider of bursaries. Some we call that study material. Its allowances and accommodation. Now, the accommodation area has presented many problems in the recent past. You know of students who were exposed to crime, various sorts of crimes, including murder and rape. You know of a few such cases in the Eastern Cape. In our visits at the board to some of these institutions, we also observed a dire state of accommodation at the University of the Free State, Kota branch, for instance. We saw students staying next to cattle kraals, literally, not figuratively. At the Central University of Technology in Velkom, we saw students staying in caravans. Now, a study has been conducted and came to a conclusion that there is a correlation between the conditions of stay of students and their academic performance. It's therefore important for us to get involved, to do what we can do to ensure that students stay in the kind of accommodation that is appropriate, that allows them to study. It will help us a lot, because if we succeed in this, we're not going to have the kind of problems that we have with students who stay a little bit longer in their studies, bringing into play what we call the N+ rules. So our participation, our contribution, our engagements with universities and TVET colleges is for this broader mission, is to make sure that students stay in appropriate accommodation. It can only be for the good for the students, if I were to summarize my response. Now, how long did we give Mr. Nongogo to come back to us? We gave him until Monday. Were it not for OUTA that initiated this, will the board have gone ahead with this investigation? Yes. Had information come to us from whichever quarter, information that has got a bearing on the image of the entity, information that has got a bearing on the needs of our students, information that has got a bearing on our mandate, we will always do something about it. And as I indicated on, our focus is the student. It doesn't matter where information comes from. Our focus is the student. I'll give you an example. We got complaints very recently, which are not necessarily from OUTA, on high charges to students. What did the board do? The board initiated an investigation there and there. So whenever there is anything that threatens the wellness of our main client, who is a student, we do that. Whenever there's anything that suggests the entity is not in compliant with any of its policies, we do that. Most people do not know. We even have a forensic investigation department. We'll have responded the same way, whether it was from OUTA or from any other civil organization, or from any community or even individuals. We committed to assisting our students, and we committed to living to the mandate, up to the mandate of the organization. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. It seems as if the Chair has answered all the questions. Are there any outstanding questions? I think they have all been answered. You have one question, new one. Okay, go on, sir. Thank you.
Regarding being involved with Umbrella and Congress, what will happen now to companies, big companies that are entering the field? What will happen to them now? Are they going to be either completely interrelated, or what will happen? What
Thank you. Raish, do you have any online? Okay, these colleagues will be our last round of questions that we are taking. Any more takers? Yes, yes.
What we haven't obviously have not seen the report and the recommendation, but you're also in the process of outsourcing the accommodation element of it. How will this affect those plans?
Okay. Chair, 2 questions. Yeah.
So, as with the service providers, as I indicated, service providers that we met this morning at 8 o'clock, our approach as related to our relationship with them is that we're going to have further engagements with them. We will part ways at some stage, but the manner in which we're going to do this should be such that it is not to the disadvantage of the students. The report is pretty emphatic on that. So that is the stance that we're going to take. On the next question on how this is going to affect our accommodation program, we're proceeding with our intervention on the accommodation program. By the way, we're also proceeding in upholding the principle, the correctness of the principle on direct payment. What is at issue is not the policy, nor the principle. What is at issue is the implementation. So if there are lessons that should be learned, they are all related to how best can we in future implement our programs better. The policies we uphold, and what we need to do, we shall continue to do. Thank you so much. Thank you. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair and members of the board. This brings us to the end of our media briefing. We will distribute the statement by the Chair, and at the appropriate time, NSFAS will indicate when the report will be made available. Thank you very much.